Maria, tota pulcra es Maria, et macula originalis, non est in te,
et macula originalis,
non est in te, tu gloria Jerusalem,
tu laetitia Israel,
tu honorificentia populi nostri, tu advocata peccatorum, o Maria, Virgo prudentissima,
Mater clementissima,
ora pro nobis,
intercede pro nobis, ad Dominum Iesum Christum.
tota pulcra es Maria, tota pulcra es Maria, et macula originalis, non est in te,
Et macula originalis,
non est in te, tu gloria Jerusalem,
tu laetitia Israel,
tu honorificentia populi nostri, tu advocata peccatorum, o Maria, Virgo prudentissima,
Mater clementissima,
ora pro nobis,
intercede pro nobis, ad Dominum Iesum Christum.
tota pulcra es Maria, tota pulcra es Maria, et macula originalis, non est in te,
Et macula originalis,
non est in te, tu gloria Jerusalem,
tu laetitia Israel,
tu honorificentia populi nostri, tu advocata peccatorum, o Maria, Tota pulcra es Maria, tota pulcra es Maria, et macula originalis non est in te.
Et macula originalis
Non est in te. Tu gloria Jerusalem,
tu laetitia Israel,
tu honorificentia populi nostri, tu advocata peccatorum. O Maria, Virgo prudentissima,
Mater clementissima,
ora pro nobis,
intercede pro nobis, ad Dominum Iesum Christum.
Tota pulcra es Maria, tota pulcra es Maria, et macula originalis non est in te.
Et macula originalis
Non est in te. Tu gloria Jerusalem,
tu laetitia Israel,
tu honorificentia populi nostri, tu advocata peccatorum. O Maria, Virgo prudentissima,
Mater clementissima,
ora pro nobis,
intercede pro nobis, ad Dominum Iesum Christum.
Tota pulcra es Maria, tota pulcra es Maria, et macula originalis non est in te.
Et macula originalis
Non est in te. Tu gloria Jerusalem,
tu laetitia Israel,
tu honorificentia populi nostri, tu advocata peccatorum. Maria, tota pulcra es Maria, et macula originalis non est in te.
Et macula originalis
Non est in te. Tu gloria Jerusalem,
tu laetitia Israel,
tu honorificentia populi nostri, tu advocata peccatorum. O Maria, Virgo prudentissima,
Mater clementissima,
ora pro nobis,
intercede pro nobis, ad Dominum Iesum Christum.
tota pulcra es Maria, tota pulcra es Maria, et macula originalis non est in te.
Et macula originalis
Non est in te. Tu gloria Jerusalem,
tu laetitia Israel,
tu honorificentia populi nostri, tu advocata peccatorum. O Maria, Virgo prudentissima,
Mater clementissima,
ora pro nobis,
intercede pro nobis, ad Dominum Iesum Christum.
tota pulcra es Maria, tota pulcra es Maria, et macula originalis non est in te.
Et macula originalis
Non est in te. Tu gloria Jerusalem,
tu laetitia
.us. That's radiomaria.us. And click on the Donations tab where you can donate securely online or see the address to donate by mail or by phone at the number listed. Thank you for your generosity. Through the intercession of our Blessed Virgin Mary, may God continue to bless you.
Gift of love, turning bright, useless glorious light, God of life, sharing light, creation holding, earth and sky unfolding. Gift of love, love, love. Gift of love, love, love. Glory be, Lord, to thee, God of us.
Hello, Roy.
Yes.
Your guest, Hannah Guest, is attached to the board.
Okay, great. Can you ask her if it's okay if I use her first name on the air?
I'm sorry, Roy. I'm having a little bit of trouble.
No problem. That's fine.
What did you say, Roy? I couldn't understand you.
It's okay. I'll take care of it.
Gift of love, love, love. Gift of love, love, love. Glory be, Lord, to thee, God of our salvation. When he came on the earth, gift of love is there, shed on love, did us learn to himself almighty, God with us united. Gift of love, love, love. Gift of love, love, love. Glory be, Lord, to thee, God of our salvation. For our soul was healed, once more dead, love so great, he not stayed, beams of love he left, only was gifted. Gift of God, gift of God, glory be, Lord, to thee, God of our salvation.
Listening to Radio Maria,
Hannah, can you
streaming
hear me?
live from our
Yeah,
website
I can hear you.
at radiomaria.us.
Hello,
Through your
okay, just checking
smartphone
the
on the
sound.
Radio Maria Play app on 580 AM KJMJ Alexandria, 1360 AM KNIR New Iberia, 89.7
Here are
FM
some
KVIO
more
Natchez,
excavations
and 91.1 FM
from
KOJO
St.
Lake Charles.
Peter and
In Texas
Gallicantu.
on 1250 AM KDEI
Gallicantu
Port Arthur.
means
In Ohio on
Road.
88.7 FM WHJM
That's
in
the
Anna,
spot where
1600
Peter
AM WULM Springfield.
betrayed
The
Jesus,
translator W277 AO,
denied him, I should
103.3
say.
FM,
In
very
Pennsylvania on 88.1 FM, WHAGN in Hollidaysburg, Altoona, in Mississippi also on 88.1 FM, WOLM Diverville, Biloxi, in Wisconsin on 91.3 FM, WRMW Peshtigo, and in Florida on 91.9 FM, WMKL Hammock, Miami, and in Tennessee on 1280 AM, WMCP Columbia, with translator
we're coming to one of my favorite,
W277DK,
probably my
98.9
second,
FM, also in Columbia.
who knows, certainly one of my two favorite spots here, which is the steps up which
You are listening to Radio
Jesus was
Maria, the
dragged
Christian voice in your
when they
home.
dragged him from
We
the
now
Garden of
present our
Gethsemane.
program, Jesus, the
And
Promised
again,
Messiah of Judaism, with your host,
there's absolutely
Roy
no
Shulman.
doubt that these are the steps.
Hi, this is Roy Shulman.
It is
and welcome
basically the
once
only
again
path that
to
led from
Jesus,
Gethsemane.
the Promised Messiah of Judaism, the show on Radio Maria that celebrates the Jewish roots of the Catholic Church, or seen the other way around, that celebrates the full realization of the promise of Judaism, all of the promise of Judaism in the Catholic Church and her sacraments. And today we have a very, very special guest. I usually don't have, infant guests on the show, but I think that today I'll make an exception, and I will have a almost 2-week-old Catholic on the show. I think her 2-week birthday is going to be tonight at midnight or so. Are you there, Hannah?
Yes, I am.
So I think I can turn it over to you now. You speak very clearly for a 2-week-old, by the way.
Thank you. I'm trying to deal with the delay, whether I should be listening to you on this phone or whether I should be listening to you on the program.
Oh no, just listen on the phone and turn off the sound on your computer or whatever.
Okay, I did that. Okay. All right, then I'm not going to look either. Okay. So, very nice to be here.
Well, this was quite a surprise to meet you on the chat stream, so to speak. And I usually get away with playing a little fast and loose with my summaries of Jewish theology, but I noticed I was getting caught pretty frequently by someone on the chat stream. So I got a little suspicious that you might be from a Jewish background. And then it turned out that you were, and at the time you were heading very soon towards entry into the church. So I took advantage of the opportunity. I love having fellow Jewish Catholics on the air, and I'm happy to take you by the hand, or I'm happy just to turn it over to you to say essentially what's a nice Jewish girl like you doing in a place like this.
Well, let me just it's hard to talk about yourself, and it's very hard to talk about such interpersonal things.
Yeah.
But I sent you my a little write up.
Okay. I mean, I'll feed you questions if that makes it easier.
Sure.
You can rein me in. It'll be a little late to rein me in if I say something that you wish I hadn't said. But my understanding is that you were adopted, and that you were adopted by a fairly observant, modern Orthodox Jewish family, even though your background may not, your birth background may not have been Jewish. And you took to the Judaism like a duck to water, and it meant a lot to you as a child. And can you take it from there?
I can, yeah. My family, my mother's family is from Chicago, and they were sort of very special family, very pious, and but also a little bit different than other people because they tended to be very, very tall, unusually tall women, so kind of a lot of matriarchal tallness. And but also a lot of rabbis and just wonderful people, really holy people. My father was from New York, and he was pretty much deaf or very, very hard of hearing, and he was just a kind of an unusual guy, but really, really awesome. we did a lot of Shakespeare over the Shabbos table, and my mother sang and played piano really well, and I sang with her, and we just had a lot of joy, although we were very poor. My father he lost his business when I was about 6 years old. My mother's father had been very wealthy, and he did a lot of Orthodox businesses in the community. Um, but we were really poor, and my mother had to do a lot of the earning of the living, and she was, literally like 6'4", 6'5", and had a lot of health problems. Very hard. But in our, the simpleness of our life, it really, really revolved around Shabbos. How's
Yes.
that for introduction?
As a matter of fact, because I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, but not all of our listeners are actually Jewish. Um,
Right.
so I'm afraid that many of them just don't know the rhythm of life that's produced by a Sabbath observant Jewish family. So maybe you could go into that a little bit.
Yeah. So, at before sundown, 20 minutes before sundown on Friday night, you stop using any electricity and carrying anything, or you're not going to ride in a car, you're not going to go shopping or anything like that, and so you do everything ahead of time. The food is purchased, and there's like a little there was like a little flame on the stove, with a they called it a blech, like a piece of metal over it that would distribute the heat that would stay on all of Shabbat. Sabbath. The oven was on a little bit all of Sabbath. The lights that were going to be on were all turned on ahead of time. And then, once the Friday evening meal happened, which lasted forever, sat around the table and sang, and then everybody would go to their own reading corner, and we all read. And then on Shabbos, we went. I would go to synagogue usually with my dad. On the high holidays or whatever, both my parents would go, and we would have lunch together. And then in the afternoon, when I was little, my father would walk me to like a girls' Sabbath group, And when I was older, a little bit older, and I would walk by myself to my friend's house, and just had like wonderful friends from Erie Crown Hebrew Day School in Chicago. That it was an all girls class, and I just adored them, and it was very, very simple but very lovely.
Well, let me from my relatively short Shomer Shabbos period of my life, but for those of you who are not familiar with it, it produces an incredibly beautiful rhythm to life, because you have one long day of the week where you're completely decoupled from any of the tensions or stresses of the week. And because you're not allowed to use electricity, or you're not allowed to turn on any electricity, you're not allowed to ride in a car, you're not allowed to use money, and so forth, it's really basically all you can do is just family time and close friends time. And it just makes for oasis of peace in the middle of the week, which or not in the middle of the week, but each week, that is always there. So it's always coming up again next Shabbos. Shabbos is just the Jewish pronunciation of Sabbath, in case you're wondering. And as Catholics, we have the rule of observing the Sabbath on Sunday, which by now really means just spending an hour at Mass. Some people do more, as one ideally should, but it's not a complete break, right? Then people are still going to their high school football games, and even doing shopping and all kinds of things. But in the observant Jewish world, it's not like that. It's really a a little anteroom of the life to come, so to speak, where it's just about love and family and God and worship. I don't want to say relaxation, but about being out of the world. Is that fair?
Yeah, Exactly. And, and I'm not saying that I didn't faith against it, especially when I got into my, early adolescence or whatever, and, but even, like even as a child, like there were always voices around that were very temperate. Like I remember like a friend of my parents was like a rabbi, was a shaman, and I had like a Barbie doll, with like a string to pull, and my mother like yelled at me for playing with it on Shabbat, and he was like, no, it's just a child, let her play. Like they, there wasn't in my family or in my circumstance like overkill. You know what I mean? It didn't turn into its opposite. It stayed really nice.
And so, boy, so do you miss it? How much of your Jewish life do you miss?
Yeah. So it's still very painful, like very hard, and I, I guess if it was easy, it would be so meaningful, But my parents passed a long time ago. My mother's family really didn't stay in contact with me. I was kind of living in Connecticut, by myself, and so I did establish like relationships with really close friends. I was in the choir at the synagogue. I was a Hebrew school teacher. I actually was the leader of the High Holiday Youth Program. I led services, and these people, mean everything to me. They're my best friends, and of course, they will never understand.
Well, what
It's
is
hard.
um are they still friendly to you?
Only person who I've actually told is a blind friend who I've been in this study group with over COVID. We meet on YouTube with me and him and another person, and we study certain things. And he's the only person. He called me right before my baptism to wish me, to congratulate me, to wish me luck. He's the only one that knows, but he's a member of synagogue where one of my best friends is the cantor and rabbi, so I'm sure he's told her, but we haven't talked about it. I haven't been able to yet. I just can't talk about
Well,
it.
I didn't tell my family for the first 3 years, so you're in good company. I have a friend, by the way, who's almost my age or about my age, who still hasn't told his parents, and he's been Catholic probably 60 years now, 50 years now. So you're in good company. You did say something I have to pick up on. You said the rabbi is a woman, so that's a funny kind of modern Orthodox, isn't that?
Well, in Connecticut, I live in Fairfield, and it's a conservative synagogue that I was a member of.
Okay. I was just,
and
my
yeah.
ears pricked up, so to speak.
Yeah.
So do you still, well, let me speak out of myself so I don't put you on the spot, but I know that I really miss praying with Jews and praying Judaism with Jews, so to speak, or praying, you know what I mean, as a Jew with Jews.
Yeah.
And I can't, I don't want to say I can't do that anymore. I do it at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, and I sometimes sneak into Chabad services. But do you, yeah. Do you probably still, do you still go undercover? Do you still do that?
I went right before my baptism, or a few weeks before. It was my mother's yahrzeit, and so I felt like for that I should go, and I do light, Shabbos candles sort of out of respect for her,
Mm-hmm.
But what I've sort of been doing is I play baritone ukulele and I sing, and so I've been like, I just sit at home and I sing like Shlomo Carlebach and a lot of the songs that are popular right
Well,
now, by myself.
I was a Shlomo Carlebach groupie, I was one
I
of his
heard that
dancing
the other day.
teenagers.
Sorry?
I was one of his dancing teenagers.
I went to a couple of concerts of his, and one in Jerusalem, and I remember, and I danced with the dancing teenagers, so I know exactly what you mean.
But I mean, I have, I mean, I don't get to hang out with Jews that much nowadays. So I'm enjoying this too much, but I have to remember that I'm on the air and that we have, listeners. So again, this is brand new in a way. You baptized this past Easter, and it was a incredibly, jet propelled, I don't want to say conversion, but ride from your first serious flirtation with the Catholic Church to being, I think, baptized within a year pretty much. So again, maybe we should go back to what's a nice Jewish girl like you doing in a place like this. How did this happen? How did this happen so quickly? What transpired? What precipitated it? What wonderful nudges did you get on the way by the Lord showing you that he, in fact, was Jesus, and so forth and so on?
Yeah, I would have to say that, really for, maybe back in like middle school or something, I never was satisfied by the Jewish explanation of why Jesus wasn't the Messiah. It never made sense to me. And I little by little, have been every time I was like, I went to a Jesuit university. I went to Loyola University of Chicago, and I read the New Testament there. And I also read St. Augustine. I took a class in early Christian philosophy, which was actually my favorite class in all of college. Like, I loved it. And I do remember reading St. Augustine's famous book, and it was like a line of logic where he comes out in the Trinity, a deep explanation of the Trinity. And I had like a crisis way back then, like reading that, then going and getting a Jewish sefer, and like really struggling to try to to think, was it possible? Three persons, you know what I mean? And and then over time, obviously, like, the Shekhinah, the Holy, the Sabbath bride, Holy Spirit is a big part of Judaism. So obviously that's always, so there's always a two-person, of God in Judaism, and the promise of Messiah and who the Messiah was supposed to be, is it's not really understood to be a part of God, or the way I was taught, but at the same time, it's clearly meant to be the fulfillment of Judaism, fulfillment of it. So I, even way back then, I sort of began to fall in love with Catholic thinking a little bit, but really thought that it was, just fine to have that be an internal, experience. But then I did, and so here's another thing we have in common. I was a Waldorf teacher for about 15 years. And I actually had I had a great experience as a Waldorf teacher. The Waldorf school in Connecticut, when I was teaching there, had a really great group of people there, and it was really great, actually. And
I'm going to put in a little. I'm going to put in a little gloss here, okay? Because not everyone has had as checkered past as we have. The Waldorf school system was inaugurated by a early 20th century occultist named Rudolf Steiner, who he wasn't an occultist, but he had a kind of occult version of Christianity, and he started the school system, which still exists and is pretty popular, and is not all that overtly occult. But I know a number of Jews who actually ended up Christian and even Catholic, going through the path of Rudolf Steiner, including me, by the way, for some reason, because he had,
including me, that was definitely an important step on my
it was
journey.
kind of a very new age version of Christianity. So Jesus was wonderful, but he was just really the reincarnation of somebody else and about to be reincarnated as somebody else, and so forth and so on. So you could have a little.
No, I'm gonna. I think you're oversimplifying, and I'm gonna defend him a little bit more to
Okay,
say
shoot.
that he really does get to the no. There's absolutely a belief in Christ as the Trinity. So,
Oh,
but
okay. Well, we'll agree to disagree. Okay. Do you know about the two Jesus children?
yeah.
Okay.
I out of that is kind of nuts, but it's an interesting thing to draw people's attention to the difference between the two genealogies, and that is an interesting. But regardless of that, when
Okay.
I was already moved to Connecticut, really because of being a Waldorf teacher, I had a New Testament in my house, and I just was like laying on the bed one day, and I read the Gospel of John. So this was 22 years ago or something, and I just had a deep intuition that the voice of Jesus in the Bible was not human. It had to be the voice of the Messiah, the voice of God. And I just knew it in my bones. Like in Catholicism, like they say, you hear your master's voice, and that is exactly what happened to me. I recognized the voice, and I knew it was the Messiah. I knew it was God. But that was, again, a long time ago, and I just thought it was important for me to honor my parents and stay within the Jewish tradition and sort of keep my belief that Jesus was the true Messiah internal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So, but something must have changed.
Yeah, and and that had to do with the whole experience of COVID and really finding myself more and more isolated, like a lot of other people. I lost a bunch of friends during COVID, disagreeing, on things, and just the pain of it all. The pain of it all just became so painful, And I also just began to feel just the oppression of sin, that I couldn't find a way to, I don't know how to explain it, but to feel better from the mistakes that I'd made in my life, the things that I'd done wrong. But really it was kind of a miracle. I have periodically gone to church on Easter. I've gone to different ones. When I lived in Chicago, I went to the Actors Church, on Easter, and different ones. Just as an onlooker. But so this last year's Easter, I just kind of put on a kind of Easter dress and went for a walk, knowing I was going to go past our local church, but having no idea, when service was or if there was going to be anything. But when I walked, there were people going in, so I just went in, and I sat down in the back, and the priest is fairly new to the parish, and he's really young and kind of energetic and warm, and he went around just throwing tons of holy water on everyone as part of the renewal of the baptism, right? And when he got to me, he just drenched my chest with tons of holy water, and literally my heart was completely drenched with holy water, and it felt amazing. And I felt like there was something very meaningful about that. And so I went back week, which was Divine Mercy Sunday, and that's when sort of a miracle happened. And our priest, Father Sean, is involved in encounter ministry, and so he was saying to the congregation, ask. We were about to go into the Divine Mercy Chaplet and on Divine Mercy Sunday, and he said, ask Jesus for a sign, that he's with you. Your hands, ask for your hands to be warm or to feel some warmth, and he'll probably grant it to you. And I could relate to that because my mother, my Jewish mother, she had, I guess it's charism, that when God wanted her to do something, her hands would get hot. And so I thought of that, and I thought, well, that was my mother's. And I was like, well, what do I want? And I was like, from Jesus, I was like, I want to see him. I want to see him so that I don't know how to explain it, but just really know. And so I asked for that. I just said, if I can ask for something, that is what I'm asking. If you can hear me and you can grant a request, I'm asking to see you. And then, it's really hard to describe, but it was like in the back of the church. I was in the back, so it was on the opposite side over where kind of the confessional is, and it was like like a camera lens slowly coming into focus, but the head and torso of Jesus became visible to me, and he was there, and he was smiling at me, and I was enraptured, and I was just staring at him, and he was smiling at me, and it was almost like it was funny. Like he said, "You asked, here I am." And he was wearing, kind of looked like a shepherd, but it was like a yellow goldish tunic and this rust-colored like cape, or overcoaty hat thing or whatever thrown on his shoulder. And I was just, for a long time, I have no idea how many minutes it was, but I was just looking at him, and he was looking at me and smiling. And the congregation had started the divine chaplet, and I'd never heard it before. I'd never heard anything like, before. And these words of, mercy, it was just like the most beautiful, amazing thing. And little by little, I started to get drawn into the words, and I think I looked down at them, and then I looked back up, and he was still there, and I looked down again, and I kept going back and forth, but then eventually he just faded away, and I went back into the words. So that was what happened.
Well, what next?
Well, and I just want to say that cloak, like right before my baptism, I was in the office of my priest, and I looked up, and there was a picture on the wall where he was wearing that same cloak, and he was by a door, and I was like, "What's that?" And Father Sean said, "Oh, that's Jesus at the door, knock, and he's there." And I was like, "Well, that's the cloak that I saw him wearing." So I guess that's the type, So that's pretty amazing that was kind of confirmed. But then, a week later, I went to St. Pius Church here in Fairfield to hear the priest there. His name is Father Sam. And the reason I went was because he has a podcast called Roar Like a Lamb. And someone had sent me a link to it, and he had this really beautiful homily that he recapitulated in the podcast against euthanasia and about the importance of suffering. And I was so moved by it. So I just really wanted to go hear him and be in his presence. And so I got there, sitting in the pew, and his homily begins with the words, "Who are you? Is Jesus calling you?" And I was just floored, and he went on in that vein, "Is Jesus trying to draw you to him?" And I was just like completely shocked. And in the pews with me, in the same pew, was a couple who also did not get up for communion. And so, after the service, we started to talk, and I told the woman that I was, Jewish, and a little bit about my story, that my biological mother was actually Catholic, and she was pregnant with me during her last semester of Catholic, women's college. She graduated 5 months pregnant with me, and I was telling them my story, and this woman said, "Oh, well, you need to be baptized, in the tradition of the early church fathers." And I was like, "No, I don't." I was like, "I already clearly have a relationship with Jesus." "No, I don't." She was like, "Yes, you do." And so her words rang in my ears, and a few weeks later, I made the phone call and made an appointment with my priest.
Oh.
So that's that. And then it was, almost exactly a year later that I was baptized by, the first dousing with holy water was Easter Sunday, and the baptism was obviously divine, the vigil, Saturday vigil.
Wow. Well, we have a caller. I haven't been aggressively asking for callers because I want to give you a chance. But we do have a
Sure.
caller, so I don't know if he or she has a question for you or a question for me, but maybe the studio will put the caller on, and the caller, what's your name, please? Oh,
Can you hear me?
yeah.
My name is Jonathan.
Did you have a question or a comment or?
Yeah, I have a question. So I am a Jew of color, and I am asking the question. The simple fact is, I am a very observant Jew. I don't even use the phone on Saturdays. But I have a question. So, what's the Catholic position for Jews who are observant? Because my experience is if Jews who are observant enter a church, that they'll try to make us not observant. That's just my experience.
Sure. I'm happy to answer that, and I'm happy for Aunt Hannah to chime in if she has something. I would say that is something that has undergone a lot of change in the last centuries. The Catholic Church is pretty old, and there was a time when any Jewish observances of Jews who enter the Catholic Church was strongly discouraged, extremely strongly discouraged. Remember, of course, the Catholic Church sprang out of Judaism, so there were a few centuries in the beginning when there was a lot of confusion about even whether Jews in the Catholic Church were supposed to or had to still keep kosher, had to still be circumcised, and so forth and so on. So there was a very quite violent separation and a condemnation of any Jewish practice for Jews who enter the Catholic Church. But that really went by the wayside, and now the only real restriction, I think, because I know Jews in the Catholic Church who wear the tallis and keep Sabbath and so forth, keep the Jewish Sabbath and so forth. The only real restriction is you're not supposed to think that it's a condition of salvation, essentially. In other words, it's not.
No, I trust me. I'm Orthodox,
Okay.
so it's kind of different. I don't think in terms of salvation in regards to Torah. I think it is part of Israel's identity.
Yeah.
I think that it's kadosh, and I think that it's just what makes Jews Jewish.
Yeah.
Like
No,
I wasn't thinking in terms of salvation.
That's pretty much okay. I mean, in other words, my take on it is like what St. Paul says: if you feast for the honor of God; if you fast for the honor of God; if you keep kosher for the honor of God; if you eat bacon for the honor of God. If you see what I mean, that.
I would never eat bacon, but yeah,
Okay, well.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. So, but again, because St. Thomas Aquinas, who's really considered the primary authority in many ways, even though he was 900 years ago, because he spoke very harshly against Jews in the church maintaining Jewish practice, you will occasionally find priests who lean in that direction, but it's not the voice of the church anymore. As a matter of fact, the head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, who's kind of like this, the head of the rule makers in the church, so to speak, he went to a Passover Seder that I actually created, let's say. But it was a Passover Seder using the Haggadah and the rubrics of the Seder, although it acknowledged Jesus, and he thought it was the best thing in the world. So I think I mean, I'm not trying to get you to become Catholic instead of Orthodox, but I don't think I don't think one really has a problem. I don't know if Hannah, if you have any knowledge of that.
The way that I'm approaching it, because it's a work in progress, but it is through the light of Jesus. There's there's clearly a new covenant. And
Well,
that is.
well,
I mean, I'm just trying to answer the question. And
well,
so
Hannah, my understanding of the new covenant, at least from the Orthodox Jewish standpoint, is what our prophet Jeremiah said. It's the Torah put within our hearts and in our minds. That's the new covenant for Jews. That's my understanding in regards to the new covenant. So whenever I hear the words new covenant, that's what I'm thinking of is the new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehuda, which is the Torah put within.
I'm going to have to abandon this very interesting conversation, although I'd be happy to have a whole show with you talking about it, but it's a little bit off, it's a little bit of inside baseball for some of our viewers, so to speak, and also a little bit off, off Hannah's topic.
yeah,
so I'm going to say, I'm going to just, but anyway, I won't get there, but I will make one little, no, I won't even make a comment because then that's not fair. Anyway, thank you very, very much for the call, and it's very interesting stuff. And if you leave your contact information with the studio, then I'll get in touch with you afterwards and see if there's any place we can go with this. But for now, I'll just say thanks for the call, and go back.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and go back to Hannah because wow. Okay, I will say one thing, not in any particular special context, but it's very interesting to me that we just had Easter, and of course Easter and Passover. I mean, Jesus was crucified on Passover for a reason. Jesus was the true Passover lamb. And what happens?
Right.
What happens 7 weeks after Passover? What happens on Shavuos? It's the celebration of the giving of the law on Mount Sinai to Moses. And what happens on the 50th day after Easter? It's the celebration of the descent of the Holy Spirit and of the giving of the law written on man's hearts on Pentecost. So there are a lot of certainly echoes of the old covenant in the new covenant. Let's just leave it at that. Take it away, Hannah, before I get in more trouble.
No, I think that's exactly right. But it's Jesus Christ in fulfilling his role as our comforter. He did sort of release us from the stricture of the law. The law, people change, consciousness change. God, human beings based on their current consciousness. We have developed. So
well, I'll go further because it's actually the heart of the matter is that the second person of the Most Holy Trinity, incarnated as a man with true divine nature, true human nature. Therefore, the divine nature and the human nature flowed together in Jesus, and they flowed together in humanity, so to speak. So one of the church fathers, what?
In us, once we...
In us, exactly. One of the church fathers said, God became man so man could become God. We have gained an ability, so to speak, to be partly divinized through the commingling of the divine nature and the human nature. So it's not just that man has changed or God's, reacting to man where he is in his, kind of, I don't want to use the word evolution, but, in his progress of some sort. But the entire structure of the relationship between divinity and humanity naturally, of course, had to be fundamentally changed with the incarnation of God as man.
Yes, 100%. And you that's why I listen to you, because you say things so well. Yes, exactly. And I can say that I experienced, the being able to take First Communion on the night of, of Easter, I did really sort of, it was the only time since, since this initiation that I saw anything, except for the golden arrow, which we can talk about another time. But I did sort of, experience Jesus like coming inside of me, Christ coming into me, and I feel fundamentally different. I feel ennobled.
Beautiful, but it's one would hope that's Catholicism 101, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I'm new to it.
Well, let me ask you, as long as you're new to it and recently baptized, do you have an experience of confession? You mentioned earlier about being forgiven of sins and so forth.
No, I haven't gone to confession since my baptism yet. My priest happens to be out of town, or I probably would have gone to later today, but I haven't gone yet. And it's so interesting coming as an adult convert. I mean, I'm sure you experienced this too, but your sins are just forgiven. And so since my baptism, I've been sort of processing through, these things that I've done in the past, and how to explain it, trying to transmute the sins of my youth into the, becoming something positive that I can now use, for the, for the furthering the mission of the divine, of God, to be an instrument for God. So I've been sort of doing that for the past 2 weeks, sort of running through things and finding the good in them.
Well, that's good, and it's true. We cheated terribly by being baptized as adults because all the worst stuff was washed away in baptism. That was an early heresy that had to be explicitly forbidden by the church. That converts used to wait till their deathbed to be baptized on purpose. Really, but it was then forbidden. But we kind of inadvertently got away with it. But I do remember my first confession. You may have something to look forward to because even though I was baptized, whatever it was, just a week or two earlier, I still found it to be a extremely powerful and gratifying experience. And I still think it's the most underrated sacrament, so to speak, in some ways, because it's what a privilege. I know Orthodox, she was a Haredi. You know what Haredi means. Nobody else listening knows what Haredi means. But she was a Haredi woman, not ethnically Hasidic, but her husband, I think, was a Hasidic rabbi. Anyway.
Like a black hat.
Yeah, exactly. And she was a friend for years before she was baptized, although her heart was with the Catholic Church before she met me, or else she would never have met me. And I kept thinking that she really wanted to be able to receive Eucharist. And it was no, she really wanted to be able to go to confession. That was the sacrament that really, really, really was tugging at her to become Catholic.
I can understand that. I had, this experience like last Yom Kippur, which I knew was my last Yom Kippur, because I knew I was already headed towards baptism. It's like it just no longer sufficed to say these things, and up to the air, to God, but to not have anything come back. And I love the shofar at the end of Yom Kippur. I love saying the words, Adonai Hu Elohim. I love saying that. And I do feel, an amazing burst of joy at that. But I really think it's important to have a loving human being answer you and say it's okay.
But I just want to defend the sacramentality of it too. It's not only a loving human being saying it's okay. It's God absolving you.
Right. Absolutely. And I I can see that, in my priest, the experience of who he is when he is, in the spirit of Christ and able to do the transubstantiation or in, as the messenger of Christ. And it's really quite amazing, that he becomes that he is consecrated to do that. So
Well,
yeah, I agree.
I'm kind of okay. I mean, I have your written witness testimony in front of me, so I'm cheating because I, can just kind of like pull out things. But you had, I mean, it often happens when in the honeymoon period when Jesus is courting us, so to speak, that he gives us extra special little treats and guidance and so forth. And so are you, I'm feeding you this, but are you still worried that your deceased mother doesn't approve?
I'm not, so yeah, I'm not in that through, a prayer prayed over and being helped by a prayer team from Encounter Ministry. And, and it was last summer, and I have very trained imagination because I was in theater for many years, and then, I'm an artist, so I but in the theater arts, train your mind to see pictures, so I seem to have a bit of a gift or a gift from, a charism of it, where when God is speaking, or it's happened a few times that I will see images. And so that happened. I was praying, to heal my relationship with my mother. And I did see an image of candles, which I knew that they were Sabbath candles. I knew that they symbolized with her. And then a little bit later, again, working on the same thing the same night, I, basically saw an image of Jesus with my mother, and that they were together. And it came slowly. I saw a rose first, which was her name. And then I realized that, I initially, it's like when these pictures first come, like I don't know what they are and I don't really trust them. So it's like slow, like I think I see a rose. It's a rose. And I think, oh, and that was my mother's name. But I did have an image of Jesus with my mother, and that, she was under his wing and, was happy for me. And I feel her presence a lot. I felt it, on her yard site. I felt it, I feel it when I light the Sabbath candles, and I really feel like it's okay with her. It's good. She's happy.
If she's, well, I don't know how to put it, but either she's very, very unhappy or she's very happy that you became Catholic. There's no other. I mean, in other words, you know what I mean. If she's in heaven, then she knows it's the best possible thing.
Right, and that's what I saw. That's what I saw, is that she was in heaven with Christ, with Jesus Christ, and so she knows the truth. So
that's exactly
I
right.
do not feel a division from her at all, or from my father.
I say that, I work with a lot of Jews who are, interested in becoming Catholic. And one of the things that always comes up is, oh, I'm afraid of, betraying my grandfather or my parents or whatever. And I point out that if they're deceased, they know about Jesus, for better or for worse, they know. So you're not,
and that's exactly what I saw. It's like I didn't know that was the case, but that's what I saw. So, it's the truth.
It is. And not only that, he isn't actually, the Irish Messiah or the Polish Messiah. He's actually the Jewish Messiah. So not only is he really Jesus and really our Lord and really God, but he's actually ours. So he was ours first.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and and this year, between watching your show, which I appreciate so much, I can't even tell you, and also listening to One for Israel and other podcasts, it's like little by little, all the prefigurements in the Old Testament have opened up for me, so many times when you see that this is what was being talked about, when Jacob, gives the blessing to Judah, clearly there's a prefigurement. When Moshe, we just talked about this online a couple weeks ago, when Moses says, a prophet is come because you asked for it. You said you did not want to speak directly to God because it's too hard for you. So a prophet is going to come and you must obey him, and if you don't, I think what the text is trying to say is the truth of it will be brought out to show to you. So I think I think that there's a lot, I really believe that the love God has for the children of Israel will never go away and is eternal, and that, that they are being led gently, to this realization, and that they will be forgiven, that Jesus said they would be forgiven and that they will be, I believe that.
I'm
and that we're coming close to this.
Yeah, I think we are. Boy, I'm going to get a very small soapbox for about 2 minutes because we only have about 5 minutes left in the show. But the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 674, says, quote, "The glorious Messiah's coming is suspended at every moment of history until his recognition by all Israel." It is certainly Catholic doctrine that there will be a widespread conversion of the Jews before it has to happen before the second coming. And St. Paul in Romans 11 makes it very clear that God has not turned his back on the Jews and that there is a very special relationship there. And I'm just going to read 3 or 4 verses starting with verse 25. This is St. Paul speaking to Gentiles. It's the letter to the Romans. "Lest you be wise in your own conceits, I want you to understand this mystery, brethren. A hardening has come upon part of Israel until the full number of the Gentiles come in, and so all Israel will be saved. As regards the gospel, they are enemies of God, but for your sake. But as regards election, they are beloved for the sake of their forefathers, for the gifts and the call of God are irrevocable." So, I mean, it's pretty clear that it's not an obsolete thing. This phenomenon of Jewish identity did not disappear 2,000 years ago. There's a tremendous mystery to it that will be there until the second coming.
Right, and with your permission, I'd like to say something a little controversial.
Sure.
And and I really feel that the things that have arisen in Judaism recently, there's just so much holiness and a new spirit in Judaism in Israel, and a lot of it I really do think came about because of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I think that who the Lubavitcher Rebbe was and all of the outreach of the Lubavitcher movement really has provided a certain softening. It sort of demonstrated to everyone that there can be this leader that people, think might be the Messiah, and then he dies. And what do you do with that? So the whole Orthodox world, Lubavitch or not, knows that the Lubavitchers thought he was the Messiah, and then he died, So I think, the general realization that you can have your expectations thwarted. You don't know. God knows. You don't know.
Yeah. Well, I will concur to the extent of it certainly made it easier to talk about whether Jesus was the Messiah to Jews because they can't quite dismiss the idea of the Messiah as easily when they point to Rabbi Schneerson and I have to acknowledge that hundreds of thousands of Jews think he was the Messiah. that kind of opens the door to this whole issue of
That's exactly what I'm saying.
whether he rose. Well, wait a minute, he didn't rise from the dead, but maybe this other one did. So anyway, thank you very much. We're at the end of our time, as they say. I'm afraid our hour is up. But you have 60 seconds that you want to, say something to our audience.
I just want to say that, these are very crazy times. I really do believe that because there's such dire consequences to the weapons and the science that is going on right now, that it's a time of miracles, and a time when we just have to unite with each other. We need to find each other and unite with one heart.
Beautiful. Well, with that, I'm going to have to just say thank you. Thank you very much, Hannah. And thank you for your presence also on the on my podcast and chat stream and so forth. And I want to thank our listeners for having tuned in today. You've been listening to Jesus, the Promised Messiah of Judaism. We've been talking about Jesus, the Promised Messiah of Judaism, with a 2-week-old, or actually 13 and 3/4-day-old Catholic convert, Hannah. And I hope you've enjoyed it. And I hope you join us again next week, same time, same place on Radio Maria, for Jesus, the Promised Messiah of Judaism. Bye for now. And I'll go out with a wonderful hymn. I don't know how much time there'll be for playing it on the air, but it is the hymn to Christ the King from the Palm Sunday procession, when all of the Jews received Jesus. Jesus received Jesus. Blessed be he who comes in the name of the Lord. So here's the hymn, which you can think of as Blessed be he who comes in the name of the Lord.
Gloria laus et honor tibi sit, Rex Christe Redemptor, cui puerile decus, prompsito sana pium, Israel Stores, Davidis et ingrita proles, nomine
This is Father Dan Rehill, the National Director of Radio Maria USA. If this program has touched your heart and you'd like to further the mission of our
Sedus in excelsis, laudat sedibus omnis, et mortalis et cum creata simul, gloria laus et honor tibi sit, Rex Christe Redemptor, cui puerile decus, prompsito sana pium, compariso cum precevoturis, ad sumus exetibi, tibi paso, solvebant monia nobis, nos tibi regnam tui, andimus et sebello. Gloria laus et honor tibi sit, Rex Christe Redemptor, qui puerile decus, prompsito sana pium. I placuit placeate Dio nostra, Rex bone res clemens, cui bona contatasem. Gloria laus et honor tibi sit, Rex Christe Redemptor, qui puerile decus, prompsito sana pium. Gloria laus et honor tibi sit, Rex Christe Redemptor, qui puerile decus, prompsito sana pium.